Dawn had yet to break, and the sky still carried the remnants of the night's quiet when Air Force One silently landed at a secret naval base in Virginia. The runway lights reflected off the sleek blue and white paint of the aircraft, a symbol of the highest power in America. As the cabin doors slowly opened, anticipation and admiration filled the air. Then, stepping onto the tarmac, President Donald Trump appeared. He was dressed in his signature navy blue suit and bold red tie, walking with a powerful and confident stride. Lined up in perfect formation, waiting for their commander-in-chief, were the nation's most elite warriors, the Navy SEALs. A moment of solemn silence passed before the entire area erupted in thunderous applause. Even battle-hardened warriors could not contain their excitement at the sight of the President of the United States, a leader who had consistently expressed his unwavering support for the military. After a firm handshake with one of the commanding officers, President Trump stepped onto the podium, scanning the sea of resolute faces before him. The salty ocean breeze carried through the base, blending with the air of loyalty and devotion surrounding the event. "I want to tell you how incredibly proud I am," Trump's voice rang out with conviction. "Each and every one of you represents courage, strength, and the pride of America." Another round of applause erupted, not just as a show of respect, but as a gesture of trust. These men knew that their president truly cared not only about the soldiers standing before him, but also about their families and the values they fought to protect. Following his powerful and patriotic speech, the base commanders led President Trump on a tour of the facility. The SEALs, some of the most battle-tested warriors in the world, stood tall, their sharp gazes following their commander-in-chief. They did not need to prove themselves. Their presence alone, their calloused hands, and the scars on their bodies spoke louder than words. During the tour, President Trump witnessed the grueling physical training, rope climbing, mud runs, nighttime raids, and underwater weapon drills, all showcasing the sheer resilience and iron will of the SEALs. He paused at the shooting range, where a group of SEAL snipers was conducting precision shooting exercises. A single shot cracked through the air, piercing the center of a target more than 300 meters away. "Perfect," Trump nodded, visibly impressed. Next, he was taken to the SEALs' living quarters. The walls were lined with medals, commendations, and photos of fallen warriors. A solemn silence hung in the air as the president stopped in front of a memorial wall, inscribed with the names of the fallen. One name caught his eye: Sergeant James Parker, a young SEAL who had sacrificed his life during a high-risk hostage rescue mission in the Middle East. Beside his name was a photo of his family, a young wife holding the hand of a toddler just learning to walk. Trump reached out, gently touching the engraved letters. His eyes darkened with contemplation. He took a deep breath before turning to the officer standing beside him and spoke in a low, firm voice. "They will never be forgotten. We will never allow them to be forgotten." The weight of those words was immense. It was not an empty promise, it was a vow of honor. For a moment, the nearby SEALs stood frozen. Then, someone whispered, "Hooya." The others immediately echoed. "Hooya!" It was not just a chant. It was an affirmation, a pledge, an unbreakable bond between warriors who had devoted their lives to their country. As President Trump continued his tour, something had shifted. Perhaps from that moment on, he understood these warriors on a deeper level than ever before, and perhaps they too saw something in him that set him apart from the rest. This was not just a political visit. This was a meeting of patriots, a moment between warriors and a leader who put his heart into every decision. And when he finally left, the image of the commander-in-chief standing solemnly before the memorial wall, his hand resting on the name of a fallen soldier, would forever be etched into the memories of those who witnessed it. After reviewing the troops and touring the training facilities, President Trump was escorted to the officers' quarters for a rest. In the quiet space of the naval base, he walked down a long hallway, where the walls were lined with insignias and images marking the glorious achievements of the Navy SEALs. He was searching for the restroom when, turning a hidden corner, a faint sound made him stop. The door to a small shared barracks room was slightly open, and inside, he heard a deep, hoarse voice of a soldier. His tone was not that of a casual conversation, it was laden with concern and heaviness. "I really don't know what to do anymore." His voice echoed in the silent space, filled with worry and helplessness. "My wife is seriously ill, and the medical bills have exceeded what I can afford. My son is at risk of dropping out of school because I can't pay his tuition. I've asked for support, but it seems like no one really cares about my situation." There was a brief silence before another voice responded, gentle but equally filled with sorrow. "We swore loyalty to this country, but it's hard to fight when our own families are struggling." President Trump stood motionless in the hallway, his eyes reflecting deep thought. Stories like this were not unfamiliar to him. Since stepping into politics, he had realized that too many soldiers, true heroes, were facing difficing that seemed small to others but were massive burdens to them. But what dissatisfied him was that, even now, why had soldiers like this still not received the necessary support? He knocked lightly on the door. The sudden knock startled both men inside. For a brief moment, they looked surprised, but immediately, their military training took over. They stood up straight, saluting according to protocol. The president stepped into the room, his sharp gaze sweeping over the modest space. There was only a bunk bed, a few personal lockers, a simple desk, and a family photo neatly placed next to a notebook. He looked directly at the soldier with the deep voice and spoke calmly. "What's your name?" The soldier hesitated for a moment before responding, his voice steady but with a slight tension. "Sir, I am Sergeant Ryan Gallagher, SEAL Team 6. Trump nodded slowly. SEAL Team 6, one of the most elite special forces, conducting some of the most classified and dangerous missions in the US military. They were battle-hardened warriors who had participated in missions worldwide, from Afghanistan to Somalia. And yet, even a soldier like him was struggling to support his family. Trump crossed his arms, his gaze still sharp, but filled with concern. "Gallagher, I heard your story. Tell me exactly what the issue is." The tall soldier before him hesitated. This was the President of the United States, surely. He did not need to know the personal struggles of an unknown SEAL like him. But Trump's eyes did not show indifference or casual curiosity. Ryan Gallagher swallowed hard and then slowly spoke. "Sir, my wife, Emily, was diagnosed with cancer 2 years ago. We have done everything we could, but the cost of treatment is too high. I have used all my savings, even borrowed money, but it's still not enough. She needs another round of treatment, and without it, I fear." He paused for a second, trying to keep his voice from trembling. "I fear she won't survive." President Trump remained silent. He did not take his eyes off Gallagher, listening to every word. "That's not all." Ryan took a deep breath, trying to regain his composure. "My son Noah is in his first year of high school. He's a smart kid, good at math, loves playing football, but I fear that I won't be able to afford his tuition. I have applied for assistance, but the process is slow, while the bills don't wait." Ryan looked up, staring directly at the president, not with desperation, but with the deep worry of a father and husband. President Trump did not respond immediately. He simply observed Ryan Gallagher, a soldier who had dedicated his life to protecting America, but now had to struggle just to keep his family together. After a few moments, Trump nodded slightly, his voice low but full of authority. "You have served this country honorably, Gallagher. Now it's America's turn to serve you." Ryan Gallagher froze. The president continued, his gaze resolute. "I want you to rewrite your entire case file and send it directly to my office, and rest assured I will personally review it." For a moment, the small room fell into deep silence. Not because of empty promises, but because everyone present could feel one thing. For certain, Donald Trump was not the kind of person who made empty promises. Ryan Gallagher swallowed hard, then clenched his fists tightly, as if to suppress the emotions welling up inside him. He stood tall, saluting according to protocol. "Yes, sir." Trump gave a slight smile. "Good." Then, He patted Ryan on the shoulder, a gesture that was more than just formality. It was a guarantee that things would change. And as Trump left the room, Ryan Gallagher's eyes reflected a hope he had long stopped believing in. This time, no one would be forgotten. Ryan Gallagher stood still, his mind struggling to process what had just happened. A politician's words often came and went like the wind. Promises were made, but not all were kept. But Donald Trump was not a typical politician. His eyes were sharp but not distant. They held something real, more than just sympathy, but a drive to act. It was as if a decision had already been made. At first, Ryan hesitated. He never imagined he would directly share his struggles with the President of the United States. But standing before Trump's unwavering gaze, he knew he had to speak not just for himself, but for all the other soldiers who were silently suffering the same fate. And so he told him everything. He spoke about the years of fighting in distant lands, enduring the biting cold of battlefields, surviving brushes with death during covert operations. But most of all, he spoke of his wife, Emily, who had waited for him through every deployment, now fighting a war he couldn't win with weapons cancer. He spoke of his son, Noah, full of dreams and potential, whose education was now uncertain because his father couldn't afford it. Trump did not interrupt. He simply listened, his face neutral, but his eyes saying everything. Then, suddenly, he turned to one of his closest advisors and ordered, "I want a full report on the financial situation of the SEALs, their salaries, allowances, and every form of support they receive. And I want it immediately." The advisor paused for a second in surprise, but quickly nodded, pulling out his phone to relay the command. No hesitation, no vague promises, just action. This was not just a conversation. That afternoon, when the necessary data was collected and placed on President Trump's desk, he sat quietly, reviewing each figure. Charts, financial reports, policies regarding the benefits for the SEALs all were laid out before him. Then he looked up, his gaze sharp like a warrior stepping onto the battlefield. "We can do better than this." Not long after, an important meeting was held right at the naval base. Before the entire Navy SEAL force, among the men who had dedicated their lives to fighting for America, Donald Trump stepped onto the podium. The atmosphere was so silent that the sound of waves crashing in the distance could be heard. Hundreds of eyes were fixed on him. They didn't know exactly what he was going to say, but they knew this was not just an ordinary speech. The president stood tall, his voice resounding with authority. "I cannot allow America's heroes to worry about their families while they fight for this country." The silence remained. No one dared to breathe too loudly. "I will issue an order to increase salaries and allowances for all personnel in the SEALs Special Forces. I want to ensure that none of you have to worry about life after battle." Before his words even fully landed, the entire base erupted. Cheers exploded like rolling thunder. Applause resounded everywhere. The men, trained under the strictest discipline, could not conceal their joy. Some nudged each other. Some exchanged glances of disbelief. They had fought their entire lives without ever expecting such recognition. In the middle of the crowd, Ryan Gallagher stood still, his emotions overwhelming his chest. Since the day he enlisted, he had witnessed many important decisions from leaders, but never before had he seen a president stand before the entire force and declare something so monumental, something that could change not only his life, but the lives of thousands of his fellow soldiers. And then, amid the roaring cheers, President Trump's gaze locked onto Ryan. The smile on his lips was not the smile of a politician, but of a man who had kept his promise. His voice was warm yet firm. "And Ryan, I will make sure your family gets the support they need." Ryan swallowed hard. Was this real? The president continued. "Your son will not have to drop out of school, and your wife will receive the best medical care." Ryan felt his throat tighten. His entire life as a soldier, he had never imagined a day when his family would receive such personal attention from a president. He didn't know what to say. There were no words to express what he was feeling. But then, With all the loyalty and gratitude in his heart, he clenched his fist, raised it high, and shouted, "Huya!" That battle cry rang out as a pledge from warriors to their commander-in-chief. And in that moment, Ryan Gallagher knew that not just he, but the entire SEAL force would never forget this moment. For the first time in many years, they were not just soldiers in the shadows, but men standing under the sun with all their pride. After the meaningful visit to the naval base, President Donald Trump kept his promise. Within just a few weeks, the executive order to increase salaries and allowances for the Navy SEALs was officially signed. The numbers were no longer just words on paper, they represented real change. Thousands of Special Forces personnel and their families received the benefits they had long deserved. The soldiers, the warriors who had dedicated their lives to defending the nation, could finally sleep better at night, no longer burdened with worries about their families while deployed. The story of Sergeant Ryan Gallagher quickly spread, becoming a symbol of the President's genuine care for the military. Soldiers who once felt forgotten now had renewed faith. They knew there was a leader willing to stand up for them, not just with words, but with real action. A year had passed. Washington, D.C., the capital of the United States, shimmered under the dazzling lights of the White House. Today was not an ordinary day. Thousands of service members, high-ranking officials, and distinguished guests had gathered at the South Lawn to attend a momentous event, the ceremony honoring the Special Forces soldiers who had served their country with excellence. Among the names called to the stage, Sergeant Ryan Gallagher stood out in his impeccable military uniform. But this time he was not standing alone. Beside him were his wife, Emily, and his son, Noah. A year ago, Gallagher had thought he would lose everything: his wife, his son, and his faith in the system. But now his wife stood there, stronger than ever, thanks to the best medical care she had received. His young son, eyes filled with pride, no longer had to worry about his future. When invited to speak, Ryan Gallagher stepped up to the podium and took a deep breath. He was not a politician, nor a public speaker, but today he knew he had to say something. He looked toward President Trump, who sat in the front row with his usual calm demeanor. The president did not seek applause, nor did he need praise. He cared about only one thing: whether what he had done had truly made a difference for this soldier. Gallagher gripped the microphone tightly, his voice deep but steady. 1 year ago, I was a soldier, unsure if I could keep going. I once believed that fighting for my country was the most important thing. But when my family faced hardship, I realized that nothing mattered more than knowing that my government would not turn its back on those who have served. He paused for a moment, his eyes scanning the vast gathering, where thousands were listening intently. Today, I can continue fighting for America without worrying about my family. And it's all because one man listened to me, took action when no one else would. Thank you, President Donald Trump. The entire audience rose to their feet. A thunderous wave of applause erupted, rippling through the space. Soldiers, politicians, and civilians present at the event all felt the weight of the words just spoken. President Trump remained seated, only offering a proud smile. He did not need to say anything, because his actions had already spoken louder than words. More than an executive order, more than policies, this moment was proof that America's greatness was not just in its military power, but in how its government honored those who sacrificed for their country. That day, as the ceremony came to an end, Ryan Gallagher stepped forward toward the president. No words were needed. He simply extended his hand. President Trump grasped it, a firm, unwavering handshake, not between a president and a soldier, but between two men, two warriors who had kept their promise to America. Thank you for following this story about the SEALs, America's pride. The Navy SEALs are not just symbols of strength and courage, but also testaments to resilience, sacrifice, and unwavering loyalty to their nation. Let us honor the true heroes of the United States. If you love inspiring stories like this, subscribe to our channel to support us and never miss our next content.